Hello, everyone. General Hand Grenade here. So we're gonna I'm gonna answer your questions today, and we're gonna draw for that prize. If you just can't wait, then better skip to the end of the video, find out who won. I was just about all the way through this video already, and I looked at how much time it was taking, and it was over an hour. So I thought, you know what, I better just stop it and re-answer these questions. Because there's overwhelming response to this contest. 29 people asked questions, and not all of them are simple or yes or no answers. So it just that's how long it took, right? So anyway, I'm going to try to be a little briefer this time, and I can be a little um, descriptive in my answers. Let's put it that way. So this is how it's going to work. You know what the prize is if you're watching this video. You've entered it, then you know what's in there. I'm going to send that wherever you are in the world. What I'm going to do, you see, I got my little Anzac hat here. Okay, so I've got all your names. And see, they're all going in there. And don't worry about me cheating or anything. I don't give a damn who wins. I wish you all luck. So it doesn't matter to me who wins. So let's get to the questions. Okay, starting from the first question asked. Nicholas Tribble, who was one of my first subscribers, not the first one, but one of the first. Excuse me. If you had to choose from any Axis and Allies game you played, which one would you play for the rest of your life? Obviously, Global 40. It's the biggest and the most complex, the best one. So, if you're going to only play one game for the rest of your life, you're going to want it to be the most complex one, right? So, it's got to be that one. Let's go. Okay, yes, no, no, yes, no, no. Yeah, we'll get this through this real quick, right? Okay, next question. Donner 347. What was your first experience with Axis and Allies? What nation do you generally prefer playing as the most in the many variations of the series? My first experience, I don't even remember it. Like it was back in 1984 when the game first came out. A friend of mine had bought it before me. We had a group that we played Risk. We were all say 19 to 23 or 24 years old, so we'd all get together and we'd play for a whole weekend. We'd play with two Risk boards side by side, and uh, and then somebody like we always talk like, man, wouldn't it be cool if we had tanks or something in here too, right? And then when that guy got that game, man, that was it for us. We were all hooked after that. So that was my first experience, but I don't know exactly, and um, I just remember enjoying it a lot back then. Garrett Grosswich, I'm sorry if I butchered your name there, but I don't know how to pronounce that properly. What is your favorite nation to play in Global 40? Well, you know what? I like to play the Allies best because to me it's more challenging, and I like that challenge. So, and then so to pick one of the Allies, I would have to say the United Kingdom because Russia is just under siege, right? I mean, like the minor powers. I mean, nobody's gonna who's gonna pick Anzac as their favorite nation to play, right? Or France, but Russia, they're constantly under attack and under siege. America, it could be a while before they get into the game. But UK is on both sides of the board, like America, but they start the game off right away. They're right in the shit right to begin with, and um, what I like about playing them is that really they're the ones that holds the allies into the game. The Axis have the advantage if the player is playing properly on the other side, on the Axis side. They're going to be going as fast as they can to try and win the game because the longer the game goes, the better chance that the allies have. And so the one nation that holds them back more than anybody on both sides of the board is the UK. Um, you got to hold your side into it until the Americans start. Then the Americans come in and grab all the glory, like what happened back in the war, right? But yeah, to me they're the most fun to play because they're and the most challenging to play. Um, they have a good mix of ground units and of naval units, and plus they have a decent air force. So to me, they're the most fun to play. Hambone. How do you like the America game? Would you recommend the purchase of it? I really like it. What I really like more than anything is the sculpts in there. They're they're really nice. They're much nicer than the Axis and Ally sculpts. More detailed. That's just one aspect of it. The one thing I don't like about the America game is once you get used to playing the Global 40 game, it just seems so small after that. You know, like there's just not as many spaces, and there's no navies obviously in the game. There's just ground forces and air units. But it is cool. What's really neat about it as well is the mechanics of the game. It's not just like an Axis and Allies game where you just roll all your shit and they roll all their shit, and then you take stuff off. Like it's air units against air units, and then it's the anti-aircraft, and then it's this, and then it's that, and you can target units and things like that depending on what you roll. So that's kind of cool. It's got some neat aspects to it. They've really put some thought into that game, and it's $20 off right now. So I would recommend it to anybody. And also, it's got like the other HBG games, the Global War games. It's got expansions to it. I've got a few of the expansions, and that just adds to the game. Big E. Okay, looking forward to meeting you next month there, E. His question. You have posted videos on different strategies and strategy related topics. If you had to choose one strategy to employ for Global 40, what would it be? You get your choice of size or country nation. Mm, I think I would use my Middle Earth strategy. That's my favorite strategy. What I like about that is it's not completely original. Like other people have been putting a complex on Persia, but what I never seen anybody do before I did it was put the naval base on Persia as well, and to forgo putting other complexes in there. Um, I think you only need those two complexes, the one in South Africa and the one in Persia. And when you put that air base or naval base on, sorry, then you can move your transports between Egypt and South Africa and Persia, and then of course you're close to Calcutta as well, so you can skate your units over there. Um, like recently there was a game online, and many of you probably seen it because he makes such great videos. Brian Wassom's channel there. They tried to do my Middle Earth strategy, but they didn't do it properly, and they made a mistake that I think a lot of players make. It's a common mistake, and that is to put a complex on Egypt, and that's not Middle Earth. That's not using the Middle Earth strategy. Um, the problem with doing that, or the reason you let's put the reason that you do that to begin with is because one of the first goals of the Middle Earth strategy is to secure Africa and the Mediterranean. But to do it properly and to do it the way I do it, you have to do everything in stages. First stage is you set it up, like you take the Middle East and you secure the Middle East, and then you put your complex there. You don't even have to put the naval base right away because it's going to take you a little bit of time to get your transports in place. Um, and then once you've got the Middle East secure and you've built, then the next is to get the Mediterranean cleared and to get Africa. And so thinking of that, you're thinking, well, if I just put the complex over here, then But the problem with doing that is that then you're too far away from Calcutta and you're too far away from Russia. You're not doing the Middle Earth strategy. Middle Earth is taking control of the middle of the board, and you're right in the middle there. Persia is right in the middle of that board. So like after a couple of turns, or not a couple, but like 4 or 5 turns, I got like 50, 60 units in there, British units. It's just like once you get established in there and you've got a few turns, nobody's getting you out of there. And if they do, then they're going to lose the game somewhere else because it's going to take them so much effort and so much of an investment to get you out of there that they're going to be forgetting some other part of the board. Um, so you gotta resist that temptation to take Egypt. And the other problem with taking Egypt is that you're putting yourself in harm's way over there. If you lose that complex, and you could early in the game, if Germany puts a bit of effort down in the Mediterranean and the Italians are doing well, and maybe you're having to secure your capital at the same time up in the UK, then you could lose that complex, and then you're done. As far as the British player down there, like by the time you get it back, if you do, then the game's probably almost over by then. But if you're in the Middle East, then you can secure that complex. You can put enough units in there that nobody's going to get you out of there. And like I said, if they do, then then Japan is sunk or Germany is sunk because they've put all their effort into going for the Middle East, and they're just not in a position to do that like the British are. The only other country that can get in there easily, or without screwing themselves, would be Italy. But you can get there first as the British player, so that's what you need to do. And the other thing is, people think, oh, well, you just put two complexes on. Then you put one on Persia and one on Egypt or one on Iraq. And the problem with doing that is that you're going to you don't make enough money as the British player to support that many complexes. Like you could do that at three complexes, but you're only buying infantry. That's all you can afford to buy if you're going to put 9 units on. It's just infantry. The good thing about Middle Earth is that you've only got two complexes. You only have to buy 6 units. So instead of just buying all infantry, you can buy artillery, you can buy tanks and stuff like that. And also you've got your other complexes on the board up in the UK and Canada. So like with that Wasm game there, and I don't remember which one was playing the UK in that game, but they lost England, and not right in the beginning, but there was an eventual sea lion attack, and they lost it. Then you can afford to put the extra dude or two or fighter or something on London if you only have two complexes down in the Middle East and South Africa. So that's the thing about having only two complexes down there, is that you're not putting just cheap units down there. You're putting good units. You've got to put, like, you're doing a 3 transport shuck, so you're putting 3 dudes on every 2 turns. But that's all the dudes you need to put on. Then after that, you can buy mechs and tanks that fly off to Russia, and you're buying fighters and maybe the odd bomber or something. You can fly those up to Moscow or to Calcutta, and of course you're able to put units up in London there. So that's my favorite strategy to play. Thanks for the question. So OP, what's your favorite country to play? I think I just answered that. It'd be the UK. Calvin and Hobbs Liker 2. What do you think of Larry Harris's new game, War Room? Um, I'm going to get a good look at that next month, Calvin Hobbs, because he's going to be at the tournament that, up at the Grasshopper Invitational that I'm going to be going to. My initial reaction to that was I wasn't going to like it because I like playing with little plastic army men. But we'll see. Like it might be just such a great game that there's just no getting around it. Like you're gonna have to play it. But I'll see. I'll keep an open mind. But my initial reaction is that I don't like it because it's all play with tiles and stuff. But we'll see. If it seems like I'm going fast, it's because, like I said, I made this movie once, or this video once, and it went way over an hour, and I still wasn't done. So I'm trying to race through this. Wildcat 6305 down in Augusta, Georgia, for Mike's Treehouse. So, what is your favorite customization that you have, and what is your favorite house rule of your house rules? Okay, I think the best customization you can get is the map. Get a one-piece map, because like I can't even imagine going back to using boards now. With all those creases on it and everything. It is such a nice thing to have one of those maps, a printed map, and you got the like the one I've got has the air bases and the naval bases printed right on it, so you're not using those little pieces of crap that they send with the game. Um, but and also you can make it whatever size you want. Like you could do a 4x8 if you wanted to. I've got mine. It's about 13% larger than the regular one, because what I did was I measured my table, and I measured the boxes that I have that I use to put the units in, and I said, okay, I need this much space on both sides of the board to put these boxes down, and then so I could go this wide, or this height. So once I knew the height, then I just went to the place that prints off the maps or that prints them. And I said, okay, I need it this wide. So then, once they scaled it, then they knew how wide it was going to be. I thought, okay, yeah, that'll fit. That'll fit. So that gives me some room at the end of the table as well. Not much though. It just gave me just enough room. So I got as big a map as I could, and it makes a big difference, I tell you, especially in Europe when you're stacking crap into Europe. I don't have to use those task force markers as much as I used to because of the extra space in there. And my favorite house rule, I'll break that into two. I've got units, house rule units that I use, and I've got house rules. I really like the research and development rules. I think that's one of the most common ones. I know you've made up your own, um, but because those rules are so broken from the out of box, I think that's the most common one to rejig, and I really like the way I did mine. It just the game is here, and those rules put the game up here. Um, the first 3 or 4 turns, everybody's out there. They're trying to get the research, and you think, okay, everybody's got the research, and they develop the weapons. Okay, this is what it's like, right? Well, it goes beyond that, because now you've got a lot of questions to ask, like, do I share my weapons? Who do I share them with? And when you're developing your own weapons, like you're going to get a choice between two things. You're going to roll the dice. You get a 4, so you get to choose between this and this. It's not just you that you're choosing for. Like if you're the British player or the American player, you're thinking, well, what's the other guy going to need? Like you rolled a 4, and neither one of those are great for you, and you're the American player, but one of them's really good for the British. You're going to choose that one, right? And then you're going to ask yourself, well, do I want to share my weapons? Like if you're playing the Axis and Germany has a weapon that the Italians can use, but the Americans and the British look like they're going for the med. I'd be worried about sharing my weapons with Italy because you can steal those weapons. If you take somebody's capital out, then you can take the research and you can try to get back to your capital. So if they already have those weapons, then fine. If there's a weapon I'm thinking of sharing with Italy, but the other side already has that weapon, then no problem. I'll share it with Italy. But if it's something that they really need and I don't want them to have, then maybe as the German player, I'm not going to give it to Italy. So there's a lot to think about in that game. And then as far as units go, special forces unit for sure. Like you should try that. Get yourself like watch that video that I have and just try it just for one game. It's easy to do. You just put a different color chip under them if you don't have all the units to or whatever you need to do that. Um, if you don't have the tiles, but it seems overpowered. And if you play it the way I've got it set up, where you can only get 5 of them in a game. Once one of them dies, he's gone. He's out of the box, right? Uh, like you don't put them back in your little tray. You put them somewhere else where you're not going to use them again. And the fact that you can't have more than one of them in a space, like it really opens the game up. It opens it up, especially for island play and stuff like that, and it helps to balance the game as well because the main game is played on that continent of Eurasia, and so the Axis have the advantage on that because they're closer to that continent or they're on that continent. The Americans got to get all the way over there. The Anzac are off of there. Great Britain is like they've got to get over there. So if you've got units that can fly, uh, that's going to help you. The Anzac guy, he can if you put an air base on. I can't remember the territory, but it's the one beside Queensland. There, you can even hit the mainland from there. So but it keeps you on your toes, I tell you. Like you can't just like buy a bunch of stuff as a German player and put it anywhere but Germany. If you got nothing on Germany, there's a guy that can fly from London right into Germany. Take your money. All you can do is roll your anti-aircraft gun against him. That's about it. If you have an anti-aircraft gun sitting there, that's all you can do is roll it against him. So he's coming to take your money if you're not thinking about it. And the other way around too. Like you can't just leave London and leave it unprotected. It just opens the game up more, and it's a lot of fun to play with that unit. And I do like the American Minorities at War too. That concept came from historical board gaming, but I've adapted it for Axis and Allies. I've got my own chart out and everything like that. That really makes the game interesting because there's so many different things. in there. Like each there's 17 little roundels, and you pull them out of I use a bag. You could use a cup or whatever, but it just adds a whole lot to the game, and that's what I like is when you add a lot to it. But it's not overpowering. Like you have to pay 15 IPCs for it, and you'll probably only get 15 IPCs worth of stuff out of maybe a little more. And so it's kind of cool to find out what you get. And there's an element of dice in there as well. You might have bad luck, and every tile you pull out, you don't get to use, or most of them. Next question, Ian Rogers. What general from World War II is your favorite out of these three? Number one, Patton. Number two, Montgomery. Number three, Rommel. Excuse me. My initial reaction to that would be Rommel. Those other two guys, they just seemed like they were full of themselves. It's not that they weren't competent, but the other thing is, how do we really know? Like how do I really know? We can read about them and things like that, but history is written by people who have their own agendas as well. So, I watched a video recently about Rommel, and it talked about him and how maybe he was overblown in his abilities because history was written by the victors, and so wouldn't it do you well as a victor to say that you beat this guy, right? So it's not just a guy writing about himself and thinking too much of himself. It could be somebody else thinking too much of your abilities as well. And also, it's never been proven, I don't think, but they've linked him to one of the attempts to assassinate Hitler, and so to me that shows that perhaps he had a bit of a conscience as well. Um, but he did seem competent. He seemed like a competent general, and he didn't seem to be as full of himself as the other two guys did. I appreciate humility in any type of human being. So um, Patton definitely did not have any humility, and Montgomery, he seemed like his shit didn't stink either. Next question, John Brown. What is your favorite World War II film? You know what? I love all World War II movies. Even when I was a little kid, I used to like watching the old ones, like the Dirty Dozen and, all those old ones that by today's standards seem like kind of silly, some of them. But I love them. And even ones that were not that well done in any era, I'm fascinated by World War II movies. Even if they're just on the periphery of World War II, where there's not much action, but it's held in that period, like Captain Corelli's Mandolin. It's in Greece, and there's not a lot of fighting in it, but just the war that's coloring that movie, that's making the people do the things they do. Um, I'm fascinated by all of that. I think my favorite one though would be um, Saving Private Ryan. I think I like the realism in that. I get invested in the characters in it. Um, I just think it was really well done. There's a lot of movies I could go on and on and on, and I did in the last video. That's probably why it went over an hour, but I'm just going to stop and say that one. Cameron Hillsman, in your opinion, what non-customized out-of-box 40 unit, G40 unit looks the best or the coolest? Um, I brought them out here in advance of that question. I think this one here, the uh, the out-of-box Australian from the second edition. Like here's the one from the first edition. This one here, he looks like the British unit. He looks like the German unit. He looks like the American unit. It just looks so generic to me. I like this one because he's got the cool hat and he's just different from all the other infantry. Other than this unit, like before that, it was just the Japanese was a little different. Excuse me, and the French is a little different, and the Chinese is a little different. But I like this guy because of the cool hat. So he's my favorite unit, I think. Also like this thing here too. That's the mechanized infantry from the Russians. The truck that's kind of cool too. But yeah, there's lots of cool units in there, but those would be my favorites. Mike Roberts, have you played Global War from 36 from HBG? If so, do you recommend it? Um, haven't played it. I think it looks like a great game. I'm really enjoying Hilltop Pillbox's videos on it. He did 39, and now he's doing 36. He's getting it right in depth with it. If you're into that game, then I recommend his channel for sure. It looks like a great game. It looks like something that I would be totally into. But the problem that I have with that game, and there's two of them. One of them is I don't know anybody that likes the game Axis and Allies as much as I do. And one of the reasons that people won't get into it is because of how complex it is. You know, like their eyes start to glaze over after about 2 hours of teaching them the game, right? You're teaching them how to play Global 40, their eyes just start to glaze over and they just lose interest. Um, and Global War is so much more detailed than that. So to find somebody that is willing to play, like to find a group of people that is willing to play that game, if I could find a group of guys in Prince George that are willing to play Global War 36, then yeah, I'd be totally into that. But to find the people to do that is where is something that I think would be a challenge. And the other thing is the investment that you'd have to make in it. Like I've got all the Axis and Allies pieces, and I've got more than that. I've got a lot of historical board gaming pieces, but you just need so much more than that. Like you need all kinds of neutral armies, and different types of sculpts and things like that. So it would cost a lot. So to spend that much money and to get a game that nobody's going to play against you is what stops me. But other than that, yeah, sure, I'd love to play it. Maybe someday I'll go down to Abbotsford and play with Hilltop Pillbox there. Um, okay, Lakefront. His question is, I know this might be a bit too personal, but Coke or Pepsi? Yeah, you're probably thinking, "Oh, what a silly question," but it isn't actually. It's actually a really good question. I've been drinking Crown Royal for a long, long time. I kind of don't drink it anymore. I don't drink much anymore because I lost a kidney last year. But before that, I drank a lot of Crown Royal over the years, and I definitely liked it with Pepsi better because Pepsi's got more fizz to it. And when you're mixing yourself a drink, um, you want that fizz in there to last as long as possible because once your drink goes flat, then it tastes stale, right? Like I don't even like buying the big 2 liter balls of pop and mixing them out of that because the second or third or fourth drink that you get out of there is going to be less fizzy than the first one. So what I do is I buy a box of Pepsi, the cans, and I have glasses just the right size to put 2 ounces of Crown Royal in and 4 ice cubes and a can of Pepsi. And my drink is always fresh that way. But if you you can try this. So you see what I mean. You try it with a can of Coke and a can of Pepsi, two back to back. You'll see that can of Coke, as soon as you pour it in your glass, half the fizz is gone, and you're like 5-10 minutes into your drink tastes stale. Whereas the drink of Pepsi, unless you're taking a half an hour to drink it, it's going to taste fresh the whole time. So Pepsi for sure if you're mixing it with alcohol, but if you're not mixing with alcohol, I like Coke better because it's maybe a little bit too fizzy. It's kind of unsettling to the stomach if you're just drinking it out of the can. Whereas Coke is it goes down a little easier, I find. It's not as active as Pepsi is once it gets inside of you. But yeah, if you're mixing Pepsi, if you're not mixing, then Coke if you're drinking it straight up. And Jonathan Meyer, J1 attack, yay or nay? Why not? Jonathan, I know you haven't played Global 40 yet. I don't think anyway. Um, I think that it's a good move, but I don't think you should do it all the time. And I think that it depends on what Germany wants to do, and it depends on who you're playing against. Because, like, if you're playing against new players, then it's probably a good thing to do just to keep them interested in the game. Like I tried to teach some guys how to play the game last year, and they didn't enter the war uh, until the fourth round, and like that guy, he wanted to go home after an hour. The guy that was playing Japan, and he really didn't want to play the game by the time it was time to get into the war. Like he was just done. So it's good to get people into the game, to play with the J1 attack, and also it's a good move against seasoned players as well. But if you're playing against seasoned players all the time and you're playing against the same play group all the time, then they're going to figure out a way to stop your J1 attack. Um, they're going to find a way to get around that, and it's not going to be as effective as if you throw in a J2. Like I think it's just important to have a different J2 strategy and a different J3 strategy, but you also need to know how to play J1. I think, and I think that you should play all three of them, um, just so you're not so predictable. But yeah, it is a good strategy for sure, and that's why and why not. Um, Chicken W. His question is, what is your best experience playing Axis and Allies? I think my best experience, we were playing um, revised. We were playing the revised edition. This is before Global 40 came out. I think it was in the 90s. And I used to play against my stepson and his friends, and they were late teens, just grade 11, 12, maybe just out of high school when we were playing games all the time. And we used to play, and they could never beat me. But they had a passion for the game, and they loved the game. They play the game without me, and then they think they got it. So let's go play Brian, right? And so then they come and they play me, and then they lose again, and at the end of the game, we would always have a discussion about it. This is why, this is what I think you should have done instead. This is where you went wrong, and I wouldn't tell them during the game. Like at first, when you're teaching them, that's one thing, but like they had a passion for the game and they knew how to play, and they were trying different things, and they just couldn't beat me. It wasn't just because I had a better strategy; they tried the same strategy as me. But you need to be a good player. You need to be able to react to what the other side is doing. You need to make up moves and things that you've never seen before. Um, you need to adapt to everything that's going on in the game, and I was always able to do that against them. And but my favorite game though was when they finally beat me. I wasn't taking it easy, and I didn't have bad luck rolling. Like I was just average, right? Sometimes I won the battles, good dice, and sometimes I didn't. But they beat me, and they were so excited. Like they were jumping around, they were hugging each other and everything, and I was so happy for them. It just I loved it. That was great when they were finally able to beat me. Um, that was I'll never forget that day, and I was so proud of them because like I was the master and they were the students, and they finally beat the master, and so I was so happy for them. That was my favorite memory, I think, by far. Oh, what's next? Hunter Jones. Would you consider painting your pieces? No. Is that clear enough? Like I've painted my pieces, but all the same color. Like I'm not painting them like there's paint the face one color and the gun another color. Um, Not now, anyway. I don't have any interest in that right now. Um, my eyesight isn't as good as it used to be, and I don't have the patience for that. Um, it's not that I have anything against that. I know you're enjoying it. I was watching, I think, 3 or 4 of your videos last night, and you're really enjoying that, and I think that's great. And I haven't played with painted pieces before, so I look forward to doing that someday. I think we're going to do that next month. I think that Sired is bringing his pieces, so that'll be fun. I don't want to invest the time in doing that. If you want to paint my pieces, great. But no, I'm not going to paint my pieces. Looking forward to seeing you next month. Lala Dadang Teletubby asks, would you consider yourself a historian, and do you use any general's tactics? Okay, so that's two questions. I'll answer the second one first. No, I don't think you can use any general's tactics because um, the game isn't as complex as war is. Like there isn't the fog of war going on, and there isn't um, like it just isn't as detailed. You don't have to worry about logistics. You don't have to worry about if you have enough gas to run your tanks, or like uh, morale and things like that. All you're worried about is just plastic pieces, and so there's not as much to consider. A great general would be somebody who, like everybody in their mind, okay, yeah, let's just attack them. We'll get them from there and there, and that'll be easy, right? Well, can you? Like, did you know there was a marsh over there that you couldn't drive your tank through? Did you know that we were out of gas? Like, you have to be a great general. You have to take all these things into account. You can't go beyond your supply lines, and so I don't think that you can. like you could pretend that you are, like if you got tanks and you're just attacking and attacking. Yeah, you could pretend you're um, what's his face there, the American general. I just talked about him a minute ago. Patton. You could pretend that you're Patton, but you're not really. Like there's so much more to consider than that. But as a historian, yeah, like I've always taken an interest in history, and not just war history. I love World War II. That's even before I started playing Axis and Allies, I was into World War II history. But I love history on a much bigger level than that. Mostly history um, of our species, of the human species, just to see how we've evolved and things like that. And so I'm a real student of history. I love watching documentaries um, and reading books about history. I went to Mexico, and of all the things to do, all the great things we did, it was a cruise that we went on the Caribbean. By far, my favorite moment was that from that, or that favorite thing that I did was going and seeing Mayan ruins. Um, I loved it. I had so many questions for the tour guide, and he was a Maya himself. So he got all excited, and somebody really likes and wants to ask me real questions, like not just what does that rock do, like he want like I asked him about marriage, like did they get married? He goes, oh, love, and he got all excited about that, and he couldn't wait to tell you about his culture. And yeah, I'm fascinated by that, and fascinated by how humans have developed over the thousands of years that we've been on Earth. And so yeah, love history. And if I could be something like something realistically, like not a rock star, but if I could be something that would be an occupation that would be attainable, then I think history teacher. I'd love to teach kids history. Anyway, next question. AAA X-ray. What is your opinion about Axis and Allies 50 coming out again? I think it's great. I think that I've never played the game, but from what I hear, it's a great game. Second only to Global 40, so I'll probably buy it. I'm guessing you can play it a lot quicker than Global 40, and it's more complex than like Revised or something, right? So it seems like it would be a step above all the other games except for Global 40. And this whole people whining about, well, I spent so much money on it, it was supposed to be piss off, okay? Like I don't give a shit about that. Just give me my 50 game. Here's your $100. But yeah, like so sad, so glad, whatever. I think it's great that it's coming out again. Um, then all of us can buy a game. It's not something that's just going to be talked about by people who are lucky enough to get one. Rich Jerstad, he favorite Vietnam War film. I'm looking forward to seeing in a couple of weeks. Rich, we're gonna do a lot of gaming. Um, favorite Vietnam War film. That's an easy question for me to answer, even though there was a few good ones. It would be Platoon. For me, Platoon was a turning point in the way I thought about war. Before that, it was always all about the good guys and the bad guys. People were either heroes or they were villains, right? And it just never occurred to me that you know the thinking before that heroes and villains existed on both sides, and that you couldn't you that people could be both. Like in that movie, the protagonist, Charlie Sheen, there, he starts out as somebody that's just so innocent when he gets there. He knows nothing. And in the end of the movie, he's killing one of his own guys, shooting him. And so to see the progression of how he gets there, it just, it's shocking at that time in its reality. Now with movies being more real, more realistic, it wouldn't be. But at the time when it came out, compared to the older war movies that you've seen, it was just shocking in its realism and an eye opener in the how terrible war could be. Um, I remember talking to my grandfather who had fought in World War II, and I remember talking to him about that film after I seen it and saying how awful it would have been to be in the Vietnam War, and he 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 told us a lot of war stories from World War II, but he never told us kids anything about the fighting and about how awful that was. It was just more about the camaraderie and things like that, and more of the periphery. Like what kind of gun he carried and where he fought. He didn't really get into detail, but when I mentioned how awful that would have been in the Vietnam War, he kind of just like, what are you talking about? Like, that's nothing compared to what we had to deal with in World War II. He started to tell a story and he couldn't even finish it. It's just like there was atrocities being committed by everybody in World War II, both sides, and like most of us just get a whitewashed version of what our side did, right? And uh, it's just, but anyway, that movie kind of burst that bubble for me, right? It showed me that war isn't just about heroes and villains. It was about a lot more than that, and I mean, we all knew that war was hell, but and that people died, but that not everybody was good or bad. They could be both. That was something that that movie showed me, and so it would be Platoon anyway. Thanks for the question. See you in a couple weeks. So Stephen Cortez, he wants to ask about my first Axis and Allies experience. I think I answered that. Which version was it, and why did it have such an impact on you? He says, I've watched most of your videos, and hopefully you haven't answered this already. Sorry, Stephen, I did. But yeah, my first experience was back in the 80s and in 84, and I don't remember the very first experience. I just remember that I was just so into it because it was like playing checkers your whole life, and then somebody comes along with a chessboard or chess pieces and puts them down. And, holy crap, this is so much better. Um, but yeah, I was waiting for a game like that all my life, and then it came along, and that was great for me because I used to play with Little Army Men when I was a kid, and but we didn't have a game out of it, right? It was just all you got was Little Army Men, and you set them up, and so yeah, loved it. But I don't actually remember my first game. Like I just remember the first times and the group that I played with in those first few years. Um, and it was the classic version, obviously, because that was the only version that was out. Okay, Kerry Neal. He's from the southern states. He says, why do you believe there is such a high level of Axis and Allies popularity in Canada? Seems like a lot of the key players within the online community are from Canada. Um, if I was to guess, Kerry, uh, I would think that it might have something to do with our long winters. Um, like a lot of people are skiers and snowboarders and they have snowmobiles and stuff like that, and they love going outdoors in the wintertime. Um, like most of the people though, they still prefer to stay inside in the wintertime. Um, I don't know if you've ever heard of the term cabin fever, but I tell you, by springtime we're ready to get out of the house. But like you need something to do, and I would guess that the same would hold true for a lot of games, not just Axis and Allies. I don't think it's because we're a warlike culture or anything like that here in Canada. Um, and as far as why we're key players in the online community, I don't have a reason for that. I know why I'm into it, and I think that a lot of us are into it for the same reasons. But I don't think the reasons are any different than the people who are doing it from other parts of the world. I think that all our reasons are mostly the same. It's our love for the game and wanting to share our thoughts with other people. But as far as why it's so popular, I think it's because of the long winters and needing to find something to do inside. Like in the summertime, we're outside. We're playing, we're swimming in lakes, and we're doing all the things that you do. Bike riding and everything. But in the wintertime, we're hunkering down, watching a lot of hockey and playing some board games. Things like that, card games and things inside, right? Doing home renovations. That's a popular thing to do in the wintertime. Indoor home renovations. So yeah, a lot of indoor stuff. It's not just Axis and Allies. Dive Crew Canada. That's part of Grasshoppers team. He's doing a great job with Grasshoppers 3D table. Really enjoying the work you do in Dive Crew. So he wants to know, other than America, which other games do I play besides Axis and Allies? So there isn't anything in particular. I'll play any game. A lot of the games that I play are out at the lake, on a rainy day and stuff like that. And then it's games that we have at my cabin, and you get a lot closer with your neighbors than you do in town. When you're out at the lake, there's more of a sense of community out there. So you could get together and play games at their place, in the rain. But even when there's not rain, like if you're sitting around a campfire, we play Trivial Pursuit or something like that without a board, right? We'll just pass out the questions, and everybody asks questions and stuff like that. So I really like that game, but I'll play any game though. You put any game in front of me, I'll play it. Next question, Chris Perry. Um, if they made a modern version of Axis and Allies, what types of units and rules would be used? To clarify how I am using modern, I mean in the world as it is today, I think it could be a great game. Yeah, I think it could be a great game too, Chris, but I don't really know how that would go. Like, I mean, it'd be easy to say, okay, well, there's going to be helicopters, and just start listing off the weapons, but um, I'm not sure if that would work the same way as Axis and Allies do. Like, you definitely need different mechanics. Like, for instance, you could be sitting in an air conditioned building in Arizona and flying a drone in Afghanistan, and bombing the shit out of somebody. Like, it's not the same thing as back in World War II, where you actually had to be there. Um, they thought that being away from the action was flying overhead and shooting people, but even you were in the line of fire if somebody got a lucky shot off, or if there was another plane in the vicinity. So um, it would be difficult, wouldn't it? It may be more of a wider game than that, like a geopolitical game where the politics were involved and things like that. Uh, would be an easier game to play. Um, but geez, in today's world, without there being clearly defined uh, alliances in today's world, like how do you even know who to put on what side? Like, are the Chinese on our side, or are they on the other side? Like, whose side are the Russians on? Depends on who do you talk to in the States, and I don't want to start that argument. Okay, um, you know what I mean? So it would be interesting. I'd play it, like I said in the last question. There, I'll play any game, and especially war games. I love war games. The units would be a lot more modern. Um, I wonder though, like when you're rolling, would you just roll the dice and then the defender choose to lose your casualties, or would you actually be targeting casualties? And would it be harder to target some than others? That would be interesting. Um, but really, I don't know. Sorry. It would be interesting though, wouldn't it? Okay, Shields of Faith. Faith. His question is, if I could go to a World War II battlefield, which one would I visit? Uh, well, Pearl Harbor would be cool because it's in Hawaii. Hawaii would be nice, especially in January. But like if it was just to see the battlefield itself, I think that Normandy would probably be the place to go. To be on the cliffs up there and overlooking the beaches, and uh, especially on a gray day, you know, to be by myself on a gray day and looking out over that, it would be a real solemn occasion. I don't want to sit there and have a beer with somebody and talk and laugh about it. I think just to sit there and to listen to the wind, and it would be a really moving experience. That was the site of the largest battle in history, and it would be something to stand there for like 2 hours by yourself, just lost in your own thoughts, and and wandering around too. They've probably got some things that have been preserved. Like maybe some pillboxes and stuff like that. I don't know. I know there's memorials there and stuff like that, but it would be interesting to walk along the coast there and to imagine what it would have been like on both sides. Um, that would probably be the place to go if I couldn't go to Hawaii in January. Okay, Nathan Miller. His question is it actually that cold all the time in Canada? Yeah, no, it's not. It's funny, like, so we live right next to the United States, and I can't tell you how many Americans have asked me if I live in an igloo. Like, it's just ridiculous. I live in northern Canada, and I've never seen an igloo in my life. I'm 53 years old. You'd have to go thousands of miles further north to see an igloo. That would be something you see in the Arctic. Like Canada is not just the Arctic, okay? Vancouver, they hardly get any snow. Like their weather is like Seattle's weather. So if you know what Seattle's weather is like, it's more rain than snow. They hardly get any snow at all. And the weathers aren't as harsh as they used to be up here. Um, with global warming, um, and some people don't like that term global warming. They think it's a political, football, and it's not. If you don't believe in global warming, come on up here. I'll show it to you. The further north you go, the more striking it is. Um, it Things are changing out there. There's just no doubt about it. Each area of the world is experiencing different weather patterns, and ours is certainly warming. It's not more intense storms like they're having down in the Caribbean and things like that. It's definitely warming up here. Um, our winters don't last as long. But no, it's not really cold all the time in Canada. Like last week, it was 33 degrees Celsius, which is about 94 Fahrenheit. So yeah, and it was like that for most of the week. Just about that warm all week long. It was in the 90s, and like I said, I'm 500 miles north of the American border, so it's not all that warm all the time in Canada, but yeah, it does get cold. The coldest I've ever been in. I was talking to a friend of mine from Tucson a couple of years ago about this, and I was thinking about it, and the coldest I've been with the wind chill, it was minus 100 degrees Fahrenheit. That's cold, let me tell you. Um, it Like my tires froze, and so you're driving down the road, you feel like the Flintstones, you chunk, 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 because the bottom of your tires freeze, like your tires freezing. So when you're driving along, so yeah, it can get cold, especially in a northern place like mine. But it's not cold all the time, no. Like in Canada, it's not one place either. Like it's uh, just my province alone. Yeah, we've got wine country, we've got mountains, we've got tundra, we've got there's a place that it's like a desert. There's tumbleweeds rolling around in it. There's the most fertile um, uh, river valley in North America, the Fraser Valley. We've got coastal mountains. We've got a coastal rainforest. We've got ancient forests here. But there's just about every kind of climate you can think of. We make some of the best wines in the world here. And that's just my province, and there are 10 provinces across Canada and 2 territories. So the weather here is not like the weather 500 miles from here. So anyway, no, it's not cold all the time. Teflon. During the Tuesday game, which GHG house rules will we be playing? Teflon's referring to the game that we're playing at the Grasshopper Invitational. On the last day, we're going to play General Hand Grenade's house rules. Definitely, we're going to be playing the rules that I mentioned earlier, the Special Forces unit, and um, our research and development unit rules. But I want to get some input with the people that are playing the games, because they might have seen my videos and they want to try this role or try that role. We're not going to put every one of them in there. So like I'll let you choose a role, and I'll let somebody else choose a role, and then like we'll see. Okay, should we put another one in after that or not? But yeah, I don't want to put all the rules in because there's too many of them, right? And I don't think you should change the entire game, because Global 40 is a really good game, and why would you want to change it completely? Alvaro Paez, can you name your top 5 tanks of all time? Well, I don't know much of the modern tanks, but I think the top 5 tanks of all time would all be tanks that are being used today, because of how sophisticated they are now compared to how sophisticated they were 70 years ago during World War II. But let's just stick to World War II there. I was thinking about this question ahead of time. So I think the best all-round tank and the most reliable was probably the T-34 that the Russians had. They produced it at Tankograd, the tractor factory. Um, so it had a good engine in it, and it was very reliable, and it had a fairly powerful gun and armor in it. Like it wasn't as powerful as a Tiger tank, and it wasn't as well protected as a Tiger tank, but it was much more reliable. Overall, I think the T-34 was the most useful tank. That, along with the Panzer IV for the Germans, that was a well-proven tank as well. Like it was tougher than most tanks, but it was also had some speed and reliability too. Wasn't the fastest tank either, but just a combination. But reliability is a big thing. Like the Tiger tank, definitely the toughest tank on the battlefield. Like if you had a full tank of gas and your tank was going to work properly today, and you didn't have to get it repaired, then definitely you want to be in the Tiger tank. If you're fighting a Sherman or any other tank for that matter, then yeah, you want to be in a Tiger tank. But um, they weren't very well made. Like it took too many resources to make them, and they weren't very good on gas. So um, they weren't that good to use. And like they'd produce them, and it could get a mile away from like away from where they dropped it off from the train or whatever they transported it on, and then it would break down and then it would sit there because they didn't have anybody to fix it. Like they just didn't have the infrastructure in place to run those Tiger tanks. When they work great, but other than that, they didn't. The Sherman tank was really fast, um, and it was mass produced. Like there was thousands and thousands of them. So you have 10 Shermans for every Tiger tank out on the battlefield in Panzer. And so that was the good thing about the Shermans, and there was a lot of people that could fix them. Like they made sure to have good infrastructure in place. And if it broke down, they just give you a new one. We'll fix that one. No worry, just jump in this one, and away you go. That was the good thing about the Shermans, but they weren't very well protected, and the gun wasn't very good. But like they used them to swarm other tanks. If you've seen that movie Fury, that was actually the tactics that they used. The Tiger would blow away the first Sherman, and then they would start rushing them. The tank 2 and tank 3 would go straight at them, a little bit apart, and the tank number 4 would try to get in behind him because that was the only way that a Sherman tank could destroy a Tiger tank was from the rear. And you've seen a good scene of that in the movie. But that's like I seen a thing on it there, and they felt expendable. The people that ran those Sherman tanks, they definitely felt expendable because they knew it was going to take 4 or 5 tanks to take out a Tiger. And so they hoped that they were the one that got to go in behind and shoot them, right? Anyway, so that would be number 4, and I think the KV-1. It was a heavy tank, and it was pretty reliable as well. But that was a Russian heavy tank. But heavy tanks, I mean, they were limited in the speed that they could run and everything. Otherwise, I would have had more heavy tanks near the top of the list. But that was for a heavy tank. That was a really well done one. And the Americans brought in the Pershing tank, but only a few hundred of them ever fought in Europe because it wasn't brought in until later. And they did use Pershing tanks in Korea. They were a good tank. They were a heavy tank. But that one would have been a good one if they'd gotten it in earlier. That could have made a big difference in the war. So thanks for your question. And only 2 more left. Okay, Seth Wills. While playing Pacific, would it be wise decision to heavily invest in the Money Islands as an allied player early in the game, meaning allied units immediately, including planes? I feel as though with more effort, the Japanese player has to invest in taking the Money Islands, the better. Slowing the progression of the IPC intake of the Japanese, at least for a few turns if possible, to allow the U.S. a better foothold. Well, Seth, I think that you definitely want to disrupt them in the Money Islands. Um, for me, when I'm playing the Allies, obviously the Americans can't get over there. That's not what you're talking about. So you're talking about the UK and the Anzac. But for me, the UK has to fight on the mainland there. They've got to hold Calcutta, and they've got to hold the Japanese back on the mainland. Um, they might be able to go out and get an island or something, but I wouldn't waste too many resources going over there. But myself, I'm more of a uh, kill Europe first for an Allies player. So I kind of take units to the west more than I do to the east. But so really, all that's left for me would be the Anzac, and definitely I want to screw the Japanese out of the Money Islands as much as possible. But I want to do it in such a way that it's not costing me too much money. Like I'm not going to fly two planes over to one of the Money Islands when I know that the Japanese player can come down and take them out. Yeah, sure, I might kill more of their dudes and maybe one of their planes, but they got a lot of planes to spare. And Anzac does not have a lot of planes to spare, and they don't have a lot of money to hold that. So if I could put a couple planes on there and they've only got one transport and not a lot of air support, and I can put a couple of dudes in a couple of planes, and that might be one thing. But I'm definitely going to fly those planes out of there before they can take it out. I think you just got to add it up, right? Like how much is it going to cost me to get that island, and what's the benefit am I going to get out of it? The money that I get and the money that they lose, right? So you just got to, each situation is different. But yeah, if and also if you're taking all of your Anzac and you're putting it all into the Money Islands, then why as a Japanese player wouldn't you just divert from that and go and take Anzac out, like go right down to Australia? So you have to hold your homeland. You have to make sure that you don't lose Sydney. That's your first priority is protect Sydney and to protect Calcutta. And if you've got anything left over, then yeah, whatever you can put into those Money Islands, that's what you do, as far as I'm concerned. And the last question, Axis and Allies General. What do you think summed up would be the best chance for the real life Axis had to win World War II? Um, well, the simple answer would be if Hitler wasn't nuts, like to me, the thing that like he made a lot of bad decisions, and anybody would, but I mean, he honestly seemed to be crazy by the end of it, right? But the dumbest thing he ever did was go after the Jewish people, like that not just that it took so much of their time and effort, the resources to go and kill millions of people like that. And to distract them from what they were doing. I mean, they were killing their own people that had something to contribute. Like if they could have had those people on their side instead of killing them, or instead of them going to the other side, that to me would have made the difference right there. Um, like just take one thing for instance. The scientists that worked in the Manhattan Project, some of the most prominent scientists in that project, in the Manhattan Project, which developed the bomb, um, came from Germany. They escaped before they were rounded up by the Nazis, and so they went to America and eventually they developed the bomb. Think of if they would have stayed there and they would have been treated as though they were, well-respected German citizens and they were on board with the war effort. Just think of the difference that would have made, not just in the bomb, but in all the other weapons, like the scientists that they had to use. But just the bomb, just that one weapon. So the Russians are advancing, and the Western Allies are advancing in the west there, and then boom, you drop Fat Man and Little Boy on London and Moscow. Do you really think that the Allies are going to continue the war effort? Like you look at the Americans, say the next one's going to New York City. Actually, we've got two. We're going to drop one on Washington too. Do you think that the war's going to keep going, or do you think that they're going to surrender? Definitely the British are going to surrender. you know, um, this like right there, right then and there, like Hitler being such an idiot and going after the Jewish people, the biggest dumbest thing he ever did. and the biggest reason why they lost that war. They could have done so much better if he hadn't been distracted by his own hatred. And you still see that in today's world. This past weekend down in Charlottesville, like the hatred, the amount of effort that people put into hatred, and it gets them nowhere. It's just useless. It does them no good whatsoever. It does them more harm than good, and it does our world more harm than good. It doesn't make any sense. I don't understand it. Like I understand the reasoning why they do it, because they state the reasons why they do it, but I just I don't understand why they do it because it's so stupid. You know, it's just the stupidest thing in the world to let your hatred to let your hatred rule you and to rule the decisions that you make. So yeah, that's why the Axis lost that war. I mean, you could point to a lot of different things. I mean, if they hadn't attacked Pearl Harbor, the Japanese, you know, if they would have done this or that, like if they would have went after Russia instead, and blah blah blah. Like there's a lot of different things. But if I was to point to one thing, that would be the one thing that I point to. So thanks for your question, and that's all the questions. So we get to the contest. You probably missed all the questions. Okay, now I'm not going to cheat here because I don't really care who wins. I'm praying for all of you to win. If I had enough units, then I would give them to every one of you. But for all you people that fast forwarded to this, let's take a look. Oh, the one person. I bet you're glad that you became a subscriber of mine this morning, aren't you? Seth Wills. He just he asked the last question. I hadn't had a question for a couple of days. That's why I decided to make this video today. So I was gonna make it this morning, and then he asked me a question this morning, and he was the last one, and he became a subscriber this morning. So welcome to General Hand Grenades YouTube channel. And if you're on axisandallies.org, Seth, then just send me a personal message there, or you can send me a personal message here on YouTube. If I don't hear from you within a couple of days, I will send you a personal message here on YouTube. I don't know where you are or anything, but anyway, I'll be happy to send off this prize to you. So thanks everybody for playing, and sorry if you didn't win. Congratulations, Seth. Where are we here? Holy crap, we're still over an hour. I tried to get this video under an hour, guys. I'm sorry. Just fast forward to the 1 hour mark and then watch it from there if all you care about is who wins the contest. Anyway, that's all I got for you today, guys. So this is General Hand Grenade. Take care, everyone. Bye now.